University of New Mexico has existed since 1889. We are the flagship institution of the state. We have 78 master's programs and 42 doctoral programs. We have become noted not only statewide but national leaders in our engineering, our law school, our medical school. We have to continue to grow and provide those opportunities for the youth of New Mexico to get their education to go into those fields.
So STEM is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. Primarily what's been classified kind of as the hard sciences, physics, biology, those classes that are traditionally viewed as science.
The STEM Gateway project was designed to provide a multifaceted approach to improving the outcomes for students, particularly Hispanic and low-income students at UNM, to pursue their gateway or entry-level coursework in science, engineering, and mathematics at UNM.
This grant was a partnership between Academic Affairs and Student Affairs, working with Gary Smith, who is out of Earth and Planetary Science. We had been working together on previous projects with our earlier Title V with Peer Learning Facilitators. The grant was funded by U.S. Department of Education. We, as the flagship institution in the state of New Mexico, see it as a key role for us to make sure and do what we can to provide opportunities for the Hispanic, low-income, and first-generation students to be successful in the STEM fields. The grant from the U.S. Department of Education was funded at a tune of $3.8 million. This is a 5-year grant, which we have instituted several initiatives to increase the opportunity for students to be successful in the STEM fields.
Most universities, particularly most large flagship universities, have real problems with getting students to complete introductory STEM courses. Calculus, chemistry, physics are probably the biggest offenders, but biology, intro engineering courses may have the same effect. And if you can't get past your calculus, if you can't get past Newtonian mechanics or general chemistry, then this whole area is off limits, and you've lost out on a lot of possible career options.
The reason for STEM Gateway really goes back to UNM's data. So Tim Gutierrez, Gary Smith really took a deep dive into course success rates in entry-level STEM courses.
It wasn't that there was a lack of interest in STEM. There was actually a very high number of students that would register initially or that would state that their degree would be STEM oriented or STEM specific. But then as they tracked those students through the years, they found that about close to 50% of them switched degrees.
So of 1,500 first-time freshman students that declared themselves STEM majors from the periods of 2005 through 2007, when it came to the time of us doing the study in 2012, 23% of the students who originally identified themselves interested in STEM actually stayed and got a degree in a science, technology, engineering, or math field.
Our approach was to look at what really is the problem in having so many students, because we do find that the proportion of Hispanic students, for instance, that enter the science and engineering programs at UNM is very comparable to that for the Anglo students, but not their graduation rates. So we really wanted to try to improve that circumstance, and knowing that most of the students change their majors away from science, math, or engineering during the first 3 or 4 semesters, we realized the problem must really reside in the beginning experiences they have, which is why we named our project STEM Gateway, really looking at these gateway or entry courses into the major.
What the STEM Gateway program did was to come at it not from a standpoint of, well, we want to improve high school education, we want to improve study habits. Rather, we want to improve the pedagogy by making our method of presenting the material more compatible with the student's method of learning it. And in particular in the sciences, this means active learning.
So active learning, generally there is a small, very short period of lecture to give the foundational material, but there is some pre-learning requested ahead of time from the students. But then they use the course time to break out into small groups to answer some prompts that are put up for the students.
So the idea in active learning is to turn this around, turn the classroom not into a place for receiving information from the faculty member, but into a place where students can attempt to solve problems on their own with some guidance. We're not trying to cut them off entirely.
So you're having more activities, not just asking them clicker questions and seeing the responses, which I used to do, and I didn't know what to do with that information, but doing something like asking a student a question, or the whole class a question. They'll answer on their response systems, and then you won't show them the correct answer, right? Instead, you say, now convince your neighbor what it should be. Talk there, and they talk for a couple minutes in an active process, right? And then revote. And see if you changed your answer. Did your neighbor convince you that you were right or wrong or whatever? And then you look at those answers, and you're designing a question that the first time you ask it, about half the class will get it wrong, and half will get it right. If it's more than that, then it's too easy. Less than that, it's probably too hard. But you have a goal there for the first question, and then when they respond again, if more of the class did better, you get to 75% up or something like that, then you were successful, right? They learn from each other. And a lot behind that is the idea that, of peer learning. Students will learn from their peers.
This is my first class really taking a group setting. I always have lectures, one screen, one professor talking the entire time. And this is different because you're associating more. You get to elaborate more on what you're learning. You're not going in, getting the lecture, not being able to expand on it. In the group setting, you're allowed to question everything given and talk to your peers about it.
For me, the philosophy behind it is to get students engaged where they're not sitting and being passive learners. They're able to address certain things that aren't clear just right off the bat. So if I give a lecture on some topic and something's not clear, they're able to ask me right away before they even leave the class, or they're able to ask one of the PLFs that question. It's a chance for them to practice just really difficult problems. So I like to throw some spicy ones into the in-class activities and really give them a challenge where they've got sort of a safety net to practice working on something really difficult and see that. So just see the process they have to go through to solve something like that. So really it's just a way to get students engaged where I can see what they're doing and I'm able to help them quickly instead of them just being off and being lost.
I get comments kind of every semester that I've been doing this, that there are students who, a lot of the times this is their second or third time taking the class, and they always come up to me and say that they're so thankful that they have this opportunity because they weren't able to learn in a traditional classroom. But now that they have this active learning style, they actually can engage and see, do they know it, and get questions answered if they don't understand.
For me, one of the most important aspects, again, is community. That I think the active learning requiring students to collaborate with each other in the class, having PLFs there, myself being able to walk around the class. We build a community. They get to know their support systems, and they develop support systems amongst their peers. And sometimes I've heard students in groups berating a student for not coming the previous day and like, where were you? We needed you on that group assignment. And so I think that the students start to come to class for their peers, not just for themselves or for me. But I think that's a really critical piece, because if they're going to be successful in the STEM classes, a lot of that is showing up and doing the work during the times.
In my own experience, because I also teach other active learning courses, I find the approach to be incredibly effective if the student is willing to buy into the approach. I think they can acquire a much deeper understanding of the material and have, a better time at it. than is possible with the traditional lecture type approach.
It's much more fun to teach now. I've always enjoyed teaching, but I can do more of the parts that I like. The students, I think, enjoy it more, and they actually learn better, so I like it a lot.
Now, I really can't conceive of teaching without doing active learning. I'm just so glad that I was just a part of this, because they really opened my eyes to the effect this has on students, especially, you know, first generation students. They perform so much better if they're in this kind of environment. They're more included, and they feel more engaged. So yeah, it's good stuff.
STEM Gateway helps students by providing certain tools that can level the playing field for the students that were not able to get access to learning skills that are crucial for, I guess, learning the content in their courses. Additionally to that, they also developed the PLF program, Peer Learning Facilitators, where they actually have undergraduates helping other undergraduates in an active learning interface in the classroom rather than just having it lecture-based.
Conceptual difference between a PLF and a TA is that the PLF's primary role is to support in-class active learning. So they're a peer, and often a very near peer, so they're just required to have taken the class, but they could be able to be a PLF in exactly the next semester after they take the class, or a couple of semesters on. But they're a near peer. They're by no means a content expert, but they're a student who's been successful in the class and who comes back in. The STEM Gateway grant paid them to come back in to help other students with these in-class activities.
And a lot behind that is the idea that, you know, of peer learning. Students will learn from their peers a little more easily or differently from when they're learning from me. And then it gives us much more time for us to discuss the material, talk about why these different answers worked and why they didn't.
A PLF is someone who bridges the gap between the professor and the student. And so sometimes students are afraid to ask questions from their professor. And so a PLF is able to, as a peer, be more on the level of the student.
And having assistance in the classroom helps, we can answer more questions more efficiently. And so it's very hard for one instructor to answer questions from 30 groups. Whereas if there's 2 or 3 undergraduate assistants, that's helpful. And so students feel that the PLFs are there to help them. They can ask questions outside of class, they can get review time, they have office hours. And so it's really a support system.
As far as the PLFs, I think that it's beneficial because it makes things run faster and smoother. It is positive as well because sometimes they can help you understand it in a better way compared to how the teacher can help you understand it.
There's an iClicker point question, and if you answer A and you're not sure if it's right, she can tell you, hey, go into your groups, discuss this answer, everybody's getting various A, B, C, or D. And when you talk with your group, they're, oh, this is the right answer because, and they elaborate. And that helps, oh, I didn't see it that way. And then you're learning from your mistakes pretty much, and then you can get it right from there.
The PLFs can help keep the students on task. They can answer questions, so they can be sort of walking around the class like I am. And if they see somebody struggling, they can help. If they see groups of students that are just kind of working quietly on their own, they may go in and start some discussion. They're not supposed to answer questions or give the answers directly, but they're supposed to help students frame their thinking a little bit better and ask them more questions to lead them towards where they need to be going.
So a PLF is able to, as a peer, bridge that gap so that students can ask questions and can get that information. And then on the other side, because students are not going to their professors as much because they may be afraid of them or they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing, the professors aren't able to see as clearly what students are struggling with until it's too late, until it's test time. And so as a PLF, I can say, okay, these 8 students have come to me to talk about this topic. Maybe you could re-go over that topic.
So one of the benefits I've noticed while working as a PLF for the STEM Gateway program is that students come in with like a very little knowledge of study habits or of like group learning or even working with other individuals. And when they come into these classrooms, they're forced to work with each other. So they're forced to talk and they're forced to collaborate on these assignments. And them being responsible for their own learning through these assignments and for each other's learning, it helps them evolve their study habits. So they pick up, like maybe they're not so good at taking notes or maybe not so good at picking out topics in the reading. And so they can either make an appointment with me or with their own groups find out a way to incorporate that into their learning.
I think for me, if I had to do it without PLFs, I could still do it, and I have learned now enough that I would be able to do it. I would still be able to do it. It would not be as good as it would be with PLFs, and that's again because of this aspect of community. And I feel for my freshman students that that aspect of community is key for retention, for helping these students struggle through these difficult classes, stick to it, know that they can do it, know that they have the kind of help and support.
Of course, with this comes challenges, and one of the biggest challenges is making that connection with students, having them comfortable enough to come talk to you or ask you questions during these assignments, and also making that bridge to where if they do have problems in and outside of the classrooms, they want to come to you so that they're not falling behind or they're not, stressing out or overbearing themselves during these things. And one of the good things about this is it helps me and it helps them in a way to find ways to make those connections or to find ways to break down those barriers so that they can talk to people.
Not only have we seen growth in the students, but we've also seen growth in the PLFs.
Math had always kind of been something that I had been good at, but it had never been something I had really considered pursuing. And I had a PLF my first semester who recommended that I apply for this program and try working. And so during my second semester, I started as a PLF, and I just loved doing it. I loved being able to help students and to kind of see that moment when they got it.
I think it's also very important that these PLFs are role models. And one thing I've become more conscious of as I've been doing this is trying to encourage students, underrepresented students, to become PLFs, even when sometimes their confidence level isn't so high if they've done well in the class, because then they can be in my class, and just like me being a woman in a chemistry classroom sends a signal to my students that it's possible to be successful in STEM as a woman. Similarly with my underrepresented students, this is a student that my struggling students can look up to and see and say, this person can do it. This is somebody who is like me in some ways, and therefore I can do it as well.
Yeah, I've seen with all of them, I think them growing in their confidence mathematically, being able to explain things, and when they've seen it a couple times, they feel a lot more comfortable kind of improvising with students, trying to show them different ways to solve problems. I've seen them start off kind of shy at first, if it was their first semester, and they really warm up and they get a lot more comfortable speaking in front of a classroom, which is very important. Their communication skills improve. I think the thing that I've really enjoyed seeing is that they just really, is that they realize how much fun it is to teach. And I think a lot of them have really considered that aspect, whether or not they want to be professors or they want to teach somewhere, but they want that to be part of their graduate school experience, to get a teaching assistantship and actually be in the classroom as well as doing graduate work, which is really cool.
One of the good things about this is it helps me and it helps them in a way to find ways to make those connections or to find ways to break down those barriers so that they can talk to people. And it's more important for things outside the classroom. So I not only become an informant for the classroom setting, but also for UNM community setting. So I have to know resources or places they can go for safe stuff. And yeah, I have to know all the logistics of UNM just to help them.
It's another means of student support. It's another way of letting students know that there is support for them, that there are people that they can ask questions to.
As we've been talking to students, getting student feedback, we see that they truly cherished the PLF program. It's something that they found very helpful, and I think it's something that should stay, at the university, because the students themselves, which are the ones that pay, right, the ones that gives us jobs, they are asking for it. They are saying that it's good for them and it's a good tool.
One group that we need to step back and thank is the U.S. Department of Education, because without their support and their understanding of the importance of these type of programs, it would not be possible.
And that's one of the biggest challenges with federal grants that are of a limited cycle, that are 5-year grants, is if you're lucky and the university is flush with money after the 5 years, you can just fund those programs to continue.
What's really critical with projects like STEM Gateway is that they have the opportunity to initiate something, but it's really up to the institution to sustain those efforts. Otherwise, it becomes a flash in the pan that dissolves away in short order.
So what do we do with what we have learned from STEM Gateway? So even though we can't fund a PLF program, we've learned what makes a successful PLF program. And what we're seeing is there are departments at UNM that are specifically going after their own version of PLF. Maybe just with work study students, maybe with giving credit instead of pay to the PLFs. And even though those departments know that the money to do the PLF program no longer exists from this particular source, what we see is people dedicated to trying to find it, trying to find a way around a lack of money to continue what we have built through STEM Gateway and what they have built. I mean, most of the people that are looking at continuing it were instrumental to making these programs work in the first place.
We here at the university are fortunate to have individuals who are willing to work together, go out and find the additional resources to try to have a greater impact on student success. There are many people to be thanked, from department chairs to the provost to the president, to just individuals who are the students who have served as PLFs. They have made a world of difference in this initiative. The partnerships between student affairs and academic affairs continues to grow and needs to grow so that we can make that larger impact on the student population.
So we are hopeful that the university administration will keep a focus on the importance of STEM support for faculty and students so that we can continue to build on the things that we learned during the STEM Gateway grant and continue to keep those sorts of projects like the Peer Learning Facilitators and the course redesign projects alive and functioning. What also needs to happen is for the faculty in the departments that were participants in STEM Gateway to keep the conversations going in their own hallways and offices, to keep drawing in their colleagues to participate in teaching approaches that the course redesign project faculty are involved themselves with. And we need the department chairs in those departments to help carry that banner and encourage their faculty to continue the good work in teaching that seems to have been inspired within them during STEM Gateway.